Willys MB Clutch Lever Assembly. Let's start by taking a look at the bracket that's installed on the inside of the driver's side rail of the frame. It is part number A180, and I'll show you how it's oriented because for the rest of the video I'll be shooting from the outside of the frame rail. Part of the assembly is a ball stud number A181. It is fitted with a lock washer and a nut and is installed onto the bracket I just showed you on the inside of the frame rail. The lever assembly tube rides on two ball studs, one on the side of the rail and one on the side of the transmission and transfer case. To install it onto the bracket, simply install the ball stud through the front of the bracket like this, install the lock washer and the nut. I'll be using two box end open end wrenches, one size 3/4 and one size 9/16 to install the ball stud. The 9/16 wrench will go on the inside of the bracket as such just to hold the nut, and then tighten the ball stud with the 3/4 inch wrench on the outside. Make sure this assembly is secure and the lock washer is tight. We'll take our bracket now with the ball stud installed and insert it on the inside of the frame rail, lining up the holes with the two holes that are pre-drilled on the driver's side of the frame. I've purchased some new modern bolts and lock washers to attach the bracket. I'm going to temporarily install them onto the bracket because this will be a perfect area for me to remove the modern markings with a Dremel tool or a grinder and prime and paint them to match the frame. I also want you to see the bolt location before I move inside the frame because when I actually attach these bolts later in the video, you won't be able to see them from the outside. Let's take a look here. You can see I removed the modern markings and primed and painted the bolts and they match the frame perfectly. I've also primed and painted the lever assembly tube. As you notice here on one side, my right side, you'll notice that one of the ears, I'll call them, on the tube is a little longer than the other one. From this point on in the video, I will refer to that side as the long side, and this is the shorter ear, which I will call the short side. Each has a very specific and different purpose in the assembly. Let's start with the short-eared side of the tube. Insert the cotter pin into the tube through the two holes and tap it to be secure. Then bend the tabs of the cotter pin backward and forward to secure the cotter pin inside the tube. I know that the short ear on the lever tube rides downward in the final assembly, so I'm going to face the top of the cotter pin away or towards the back of the Jeep. I'm unsure of the specific purpose of that location, but in looking at many pictures, it seems to be the way it came from the factory. Next, install part A177, the metal disc, and notice the metal disc has a flat side and kind of a tapered side. I'm going to put the flat side toward the cotter pin on the inside of the tube. If you look inside, you will see the slight radius that is now facing towards you. Lube the inside generously, but not to gob it. I am using a multi-purpose EP grease. This stuff is really sticky and absolutely fantastic. The next step is to grease up the pad. It's part number A176. Again, be generous with the lube, but not as to gob it on. You want to saturate this pad, and then you want to insert it into the tube on top of the metal disc. This pad rides on the ball stud, so you want to make sure you've got an adequate amount of grease inside the tube. I'll show you inside the tube here. I've got about 3/8 of an inch of the grease on top of the pad. Let's move on to the long-eared side of the tube and apply a little bit of the EP grease on the inside of the tube with your finger. This will help lubricate the spring that we're about to install. Install the cotter pin in the same way you did the short side, and again I'm going to orient the round side or top side towards the back of the Jeep because I know that this ear goes upwards in the installation. Next, we'll install the spring. The spring is part number A178 and is simply installed like this into the tube. Next, we'll install the metal disc in the same way we did the opposite side with the flat side towards the spring on the inside of the tube. Lube up the second pad with the EP grease, and let me show you this right here. This stuff is absolutely fantastic. I believe this is a Lucas number 2 red and tacky, what they call it. Look how sticky that is. And it's got some anti-seize agents installed to it, so it's also going to prevent wear and rust on your parts. And we'll just slide the pad down inside the tube on top of the metal disc. I haven't removed my ball stud and my bracket from the inside of the frame rail because I want to show you the locations. And I've also got the clutch cable here wired up so it did not fall out of its location with a little spring wire when I installed it. We'll lube up the ball stud on the transmission transfer case side with some of the EP grease. Be a little generous here. We're going to put a seal here and we're going to lube these again, but we'll just get these a little coated up so we can put the seals on pretty easily, and the seals will have some lube behind them also. There are 2 rubber seals for each side of the tube on the ball studs. They are part number A877. You simply slip them onto the ball stud, and I'll give them a little twist so they get some lube on the inside and the out. I've removed the bracket and the ball stud from the frame rail side, and I'll install the rubber seal just as I did the other one, and then I will apply some more of the EP grease on the outside of the ball stud. The lube on the outside of these ball studs as well as the inside of the tube is important, as you will see in the future, as this mechanism actually actuates your clutch lever inside and out. So you really want to be sure you've got these properly lubricated. So we're all lubed up and ready to go. You want to take the long-eared side, or the side with the spring in it, and that goes to the transmission transfer case, and the short side goes towards the outside of the frame rail, and you want to insert the tube on top of the ball stud on the transmission side. Just give it a little twist, and then we can hold it up against the frame rail with one of the ears just for a second while we get our bracket and our other ball stud. You want to give this a little bit of push in and out, make sure it's all lubricated correctly. Again, lubrication here is very important. Now we come to the fun part, the final installation of the assembly. Face the short ear forward towards the Jeep inside the rail so you can swing the tube inside and out easily. Install the ball stud into the end of the tube and place the bracket against the frame rail. You can use your palm to tap the bracket into its location. To align the threads on the bracket with the holes in the outside of the frame, I am using a small tapered drift. Simply install the drift and align the threaded bracket into the holes on the side of the frame. I'll install the bolts and the lock washers back into the locations and tighten them down with a ratchet and a socket. As you can see, I've got a little bit of grease to clean up, but it's not a big deal. I'll clean it up and touch up the inside of the rail as well as the outside bolts. Check to be sure your lever assembly pivots smoothly. Make sure there's no binding, and then we can install the yoke from the clutch cable. To attach the clutch cable yoke to the lever assembly, we'll be using a clevis pin, part number 339043. I'm applying a little bit of the EP grease to the clevis pin as well as the 2 openings on the yoke. This is a heavily used assembly, and the lubrication will help both in the function and the wear on these small parts. While assembling this part, keep a little tension on the clutch cable so the ball doesn't come out of the lever on the inside of the bell housing. Line up the holes on the yoke and the lever arm or ear and insert the clevis pin. Next, install the cotter pin into the hole on the clevis pin on the back side of the yoke. Using a pair of needle nose pliers, I'll bend each leg of the cotter pin backwards and forwards so the clevis pin cannot come out of the assembly. Check to make sure the ball did not come out of the lever on the inside of the bell housing by testing the tension back and forth. I will be installing the rod that actually connects this assembly to the clutch pedal in the next video. Thank you for watching, and please subscribe to Team G503 on YouTube. Thank you to Ron Fitzpatrick and Ron Fitzpatrick Jeep Parts.